Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second in a series of how-to sessions dealing with accessibility. This one is Fix Your Ambiguous Anchor Text. We are again joined by Debbie Dorsey, who is Assistant Professor of Health at Harford Community College. Debbie is a Maryland Distance Learning Education Association board member, a Quality Matters peer reviewer, and a 2020 NISOD Excellence Award recipient. So welcome, Debbie, and I will turn it over to you.
Good morning. So I always keep my camera on in the beginning so that you can see that yes, I am a human being, but then I turn it off so that we can do our focus on the slide presentation. And so if you cannot, can everyone see? I always like to ask first, can everyone see the first slide?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn myself off here. And we're going to talk about anchor text. And so again, my name is Debbie Dorsey. I am Assistant Professor of Health at Harford Community College, and I am well-versed in accessibility. I tend not to want to use the word expert because I think that there's always opportunities to learn more. So I am well-versed in it, I can say that. And what we're going to talk about today is exactly that, is anchor text. But what I want to show you first, and just to make sure that everybody is on sort of the same page, is a quick review of what anchor text is. And I should also say that if you have questions as I go through, I know Marjorie is moderating. Please feel free to put them into the chat, and I can answer them as I go along. And I encourage you, like I said, to ask those questions. So anchor text, what is it exactly? Basically what it is words that we use that have links embedded into them that take the person to a different place. And so when we talk about this in the context of WCAG and our different principles of WCAG, which is of course the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, this is about perceive. So when I am a person using a screen reader and I'm looking at content, it will identify the anchor text, and then that is what I perceive. I understand that this text, when I select it, it will take me to a different place. Now, that could be a different web page, but it can also, of course, if we're familiar with Word and the Microsoft products, it could potentially take me to a different place in a document. So there I am. I'm redirected. I always like to use this slide because I try to be funny, and you can see that it's taking me, I selected this link and it's taking me somewhere else. And this makes sense. So if my anchor text is correct, then wherever I go, it's going to make sense, right? So that if I selected, say, gene environment interactions, it would take me to a place, and of course, this isn't what that is, but it would take me to a place where I understood this makes better sense. We use hyperlinks for a variety of reasons. We use it to perhaps help the learner understand a topic in greater depth, or maybe we need to take them to a place where they fill out a form or they do something, an additional action. And so I want to show you things of links that do not make sense. But before we do that, it's sort of important to understand, if you're unfamiliar with it, how screen readers work. And of course, screen readers are used by a variety of different learners. We always consider them more to be people who are sight impaired, because of course the screen reader is reading the information out to the learner. But one thing that I recently sort of came to understand is that there are some people that use a screen reader just because they like to hear text. It is the way that they learn. And so when we talk about, to me, it's similar to closed captioning, that there are people who, while they're watching a video, they like to have the captions on because it's providing them both visual, and they can watch what's happening in the video, but then they can also read along. And just some people do well with multiple sources of information coming in, or multiple different methods of receiving information. And so there are some people who will use a screen reader because it helps them. And maybe that's a cognitive issue, but to be able to hear and see the words at the same time helps them in the learning process. So when we look at how a screen reader works, depending on the person's assistive technology, they use the tab, they use the space bar, and it will take them word by word through the text. And you can see this is just sort of everyone's favorite topic, right? Quasi-governmental health organizations. I teach US healthcare, so I try to use some of my own material when I share examples. So this is an example of what it would look like as a person is tabbing through some text, that it would also highlight the word that is being spoken. But here is the other thing that a screen reader can do, is that it can tab from link to link. And so if we look at this particular example, what you're going to hear, what the student would hear is, if they didn't want to go through that entire body of text, they could say, I just want to hear the hyperlink. And it would say, link innovation, link tangible results. And this is really important because when you understand what it sounds like to the other person, you can better understand why, what kind of anchor text you need to have. And so for this particular course, when we look at a hyperlink, it's usually underlined. It could be in blue font, which we see here, or it could be both. It could be blue font and underlining. And so I'm going to go back here for just a second. This is why it's important that we not use underlining in our text. We often, I call that a hard copy habit. We were used to using underlining when we were producing hard copy. But when you underline a word that's in a body of text, it's confusing to the reader. They may think that is a hyperlink. And so they continuously try to open that hyperlink and they're like, what's happening? And it's underlined text. So we really want to get out of the habit of underlining text. So this is a common mistake. This is called a generic hyperlink. And I think you will understand why this is a problem when I give you sort of that example of what a screen reader would do. So if I'm a person using a screen reader, I'm going to go word through word here. And okay, this makes sense. But I understood that within this body of text, there were also hyperlinks. So if I want to go back and just kind of go from hyperlink to hyperlink without having to go through the entire body of text, this is what I'm going to hear. Link, click here. Link, click here. Well, I have no idea where I'm going. Click here could mean anything. And this is one that still sort of continues to show up now and again. I think that this is the one that we really want to break out of for two reasons. We have no idea where we're going. And the word click, I always find myself making this mistake as well. Not everybody clicks in order to open up a hyperlink. We really want to stop using that instruction. Click here, click here. I recommend that you use the word select. Select this hyperlink, not click this hyperlink. It's just more inclusive language. And so again, the problem is, where am I going to go? Okay, I heard the body of the text before I actually started jumping from hyperlink to hyperlink, but am I going to remember exactly where I was, at that time that I first reviewed this text? I know I wouldn't. I just think that it makes better sense, and it is a better practice for us to select different anchor text. And this is another problem that typically people have good intentions, but they're selecting the wrong words to use as anchor text. And it's the same thing. The person will go through this entire body of text, and then they want to go back and just go from hyperlink to hyperlink. And this is what they hear: link, organizations, link organizations. So they're like, okay, well, what kind of organizations are we talking about here? And the word organizations shows up 1, 2, let's see here, 3 and 4 times in this particular body of text. And again, where am I going here? Now, this is unnecessary, and I see this from time to time as well, where someone will hyperlink the entire sentence. And again, where is this going to go? Why is this entire sentence like what kind of a web page or what other part of the document or the file am I going to go based on this particular sentence? And then this one, which I am a QM reviewer, and I will still from time to time see the naked hyperlink fully show in the content, in the learning content. So think about what this sounds like. Link, HTTPS. I mean, it's going to read out the entire thing. And we know that there are some hyperlinks that go on and on and on forever. And so that is exactly what a person will hear when they are using a screen reader. So we want to avoid this. I went back because I recall, it seemed like it was maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, where we were telling people, put the entire naked link into what you're doing because, just in case a hyperlink doesn't work, this is their second option. And that is not a good practice. We discontinued this practice. And really then, what we want to do as people who create content, it is our responsibility to go back and make sure that all of our anchor text is taking the learner to where we want them to go. So basically, we need to get in the habit of, after we create content, that we double check our links, and also that we follow, I call it auditing content, that each semester we go back and make sure that those are still functional links, because we know that web pages can become sneaky, and the last thing we want is for a learner to select a anchor text and it take them to a 404, right? So we just want to establish different and new practices when we create and when we update our content. So this is an example of the correct way to do this. The learner has gone through the entire paragraph. They know that there are hyperlinks as anchor text, and when they select it, it will say link voluntary health organizations, link non-governmental health, I don't want to say horse, health organizations. It makes sense. When they select that link, they know that they're going to go to a page that goes into that subject matter in greater depth. So the other sort of point that I want to make here is that we really want to avoid anchor text that is an action. So for example, if we had a form for the learner to complete, we don't want to make the word complete the anchor text, because what does that mean? But we do want to then tell the learner what they are completing. So in this particular case, we would make that anchor text participation form, because when the learner selects that hyperlink, they know that's where they're going, to a form that they need to fill out. So I brought in some practice stuff here, and we, Microsoft Word is our common software that we use to produce content. And so what I did was I looked at this paragraph and I said, well, okay, where might somebody want to put in additional information? So perhaps they wanted to say, all right, I want the learner to find out more about the Declaration of Independence in 1776. And of course, I've got a reliable source because it ends in edu, which, by the way, this is just sort of a side, but I wanted to show you a very quick way to separate out reliable sources. So if I put in their Declaration of Independence, /.edu, then Google will filter out everything and only include sources that are edu. So that's just a little bonus here that I'm going to give you about this particular topic. But I wanted to make sure that everyone understood how to actually put in a hyperlink. So in this particular case, I'm using the Declaration of Independence in 1776. And, I might decide that I want to include 1776, but I could just keep it as the Declaration of Independence. And so this is the hyperlink that I want to take the person to. So I will copy that hyperlink, and then I highlight the words and insert the link right here. Okay. And there it is, the Declaration of Independence. So as the learner goes through this text, they go back and they want to hear just the links. They will hear link, the Declaration of Independence. And when they select that particular link, yes, we're good, they know that they are going to go to this particular web page. We go back to this. Let's say I wanted the learner to know more about John Locke, because who doesn't? I could take and copy this hyperlink. And then I could go into my text. Where are you, John? Here you are. And same thing, I highlight it and I insert the link. And I know that when I select this link, there we go, it will open to this particular web page. So let's go back here. And that is how, and even if you're working, excuse me, and say your LMS text editor, it's the same process of creating a link, creating anchor text link. It just would look perhaps a little bit different, but it's the same concept. Identify the anchor text and insert the link. So let's go back here. Nope. There we go. Now, before I close and answer any questions that you might have, I wanted to make you aware that Maryland Online does have a playlist that includes a series of videos that are they're less than, some of them are 7 minutes, but usually they're 7 minutes or less, that also reiterate a lot of the topics that we're going to cover in this particular webinar series. They provide a little bit more information about the end user experience. So what it's like for a learner, for a student to navigate through our content. And it also then provides more information about how to meet those accessibility standards. And so this is what I have for you today. Remember that we want to make these pretty quick. We're staying under 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my content right now, and I can open this up to any questions that you might have. Let me go ahead and start my video. There I am again. Hello. So does anyone have any questions? Looks like there's something in the chat. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Other questions at all about what we covered today? I know that we want to also put up another screen that everyone can take a picture of if you do need it for your institution to show that you have completed this professional development.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you very much. That was very good. I think all of us are guilty of some of those things that you showed us. Partly because we're taking the shortcut, like, oh, just paste the link in here real quick. So thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if there are other questions,
I do. I actually have one quick question and then one I was going to ask about a suggestion. Deb helps me a lot because I am definitely trying to make Maryland Online a little bit more going in the right direction. You said no underlining, which I understand, and you've told me that before, but what about bolding? Do we avoid bolding? Because
I think that if you want, usually what we do, right, is we want the learner to focus, know that this is something that is important when we bold. And so I think it is okay to bold, but I would discourage using the color blue with bolding, because again, that's a key that is sometimes how hyperlinks are listed. In terms of, when we use color in our content, there are visual impairments where the person cannot distinguish between colors. So I'm not a huge fan of that. What a lot of times, but they can see the contrast typically. But oftentimes if it's a word that I want the person to really hone in on, I will bold it and make the font a little larger, because then I'm telling my students, this is the word you need to, like, a lot of times that word is important. And so I think sometimes that is a good practice. But if you are going to bold, just try to stay away from also using the color blue.
So how does a screen reader with the big letters, does that?
No, it does not. And so it's not exactly helpful for people who are visually impaired. It would be nice if it said something like important, pay attention to this. And so really it only works well for students who do not have visual impairments. And so because it doesn't hurt the person who is, it doesn't help them, but it doesn't hurt them either. For the person who's using a screen reader, I usually say it's okay. When a person uses a screen reader, their experience, they're very proficient. And so as they go through it, if you have sort of well-structured sentences, they're going to understand the importance of what you're saying. So you just really have to think about how you phrase what you're saying to convey this is important. Now, the other thing that we sometimes do is we try to bold headers. However, we don't want to do that. We actually want to use styles in Microsoft Word, because what that's going to do is it's going to communicate to the person the different sections. So for example, if I just used plain text and I bolded it as a way of defining a section of text, that does not necessarily convey that to a person who is using a screen reader. But if I use styles where I identify that text as a header 1, header 2, it will say header 1, and then the name, and then the text that follows. So it helps that person understand this different sections of the document.
That should probably be another webinar.
Semantic structure. I'm not sure we may have that coming up as a webinar. I know we address it in one of the videos.
And I know there's not much time left, and I want other people to ask questions, but do you have any suggestions, just off the top of your head, of like free or easy to access screen reader, not screen reader, checkers, so that if we're doing this, to like make sure we're not messing up the links?
Well, when I use, and I always get the acronym wrong when I test what my things. I'm gonna try to escape out of here so I can give you the correct. I think it's called, I have it on my desktop here. Got to get out of all these different and it's freeware. It's NVDA that I use to check screen reader and are things flowing. JAWS is our gold standard, but most of us are not going to use that. As non-users, those of us who do not use screen readers on a regular basis, there's a learning curve that you have to sort of play around with in order to understand what it really what that experience is for the person as they're going through and using the screen reader. So some of it is you got to learn how to do it first, and it can be a little frustrating, but once you get the hang of it, you are able to check using that. It's crowdsource or whatever that's called, freeware, NVDA. Anyone can download it. The other thing that I would recommend is if you're concerned, if you're not sure whether or not your content is accessible, see if you can pair up with your Office of Accessibility and ask them to run it. Most of them have JAWS. That's how they're going to check to see whether or not it runs cleanly through. So that is another resource. I have attempted to use web-based resources, and I don't love them. Sometimes there's plugins. The problem, of course, with plugins means that they're only going to work as well as the developer keeps them updated. And, you know, you can have a plugin working great for a month and then it goes bad. So I think that your best bet is if you really want to have the experience is NVDA, and don't be surprised if as you're using it you go stop because it just goes off through everything and you have to learn it.
Well, maybe we can include those resources when we send the link out.
We
do
can
that. I can catch up with you with them. I don't want to take up, because I know Carla has a
yes
question.
Carla, go ahead.
Yeah, have you used the accessibility tool in Word much? And do you know if it's accurate?
So I haven't used it often. I have attempted to use it and I didn't love it. I feel like Word does its best to try to help, but it favors Word, if that makes sense. And so when you use it, you might safely say that as long as I'm using a Word document, this probably is okay. However, most individuals who are using screen readers are using an overlay. So they're going to use JAWS, and I would be concerned that Word would be conveying, yeah, this is great. And then you get in and you use JAWS or another software and it would say, no, there's problems. So for example, let's say you weren't using styles in Word and you did you used their native function, right? And it read through. It wouldn't necessarily identify, hey, this is a problem that you're not using headers. It would just kind of go through and read that. Typically, when we create something in Word and we save it as a PDF, in general, it translates over. However, you know, if you did it that way, and let's say, you know, I mean, a lot of times we don't like to put a Word document up in our LMS. And say you saved it as a PDF and you moved it over and to a screen reader functionality there, of course, then Word would no longer work for you. And I have sometimes seen that what it said, yes, this is good in Word. When I saved it as a PDF and then ran it through, it wasn't a clean one-to-one. So the bottom line is I would recommend that you use something that lays over top of whatever you're using, whether that's an LMS, whether that's a PDF, rather than exclusively rely on the app's version. I don't like to say that the app lies, but the app is going to lean towards favoring itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Nina, I see.
There's a question from Nina. I'm going to go ahead and put the slide up if people want to copy that slide while you answer Nina's question.
Sure. So do screen readers work in a similar way in LMS? Yes. So if I add a web link in Blackboard, would a screen reader read that? Yes, it should. So if you are using the text editor in Blackboard, and they use a screen reader, it should say link and the anchor text. And that's true for Canvas, D2L. Yes, in general, that it will identify it that way.
So even if it's like not within the text, so it's not a text editor, but it's like you add a separate item that is a link, that too?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're
Yeah.
using a tool as a link. That is a good question. My thought on that is it may depend on how you have things set up. That is a question we use JAWS to try to determine how it will sound. If the LMS is set up to say web link or link and take you out into it, yes.
Okay.
For D2L, I'm not sure. I
Yeah, I
have
don't know
not run
yet.
it through. Yeah, I have not run it through, and I've noticed that depending on how you put in a link, whether you use an embed code, if you keep it in the actual HTML, it'll show like a video icon, but sometimes not. And so I don't know if the icon generates the actual telling the student link,
Right.
boom.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, because I know more about Blackboard, but obviously I need to learn D2L. But it just gives me an icon that looks like a hyperlink icon.
My guess is that it does, if it doesn't say link, it does convey to the student what's happening.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
Well, Debbie, thanks again for another great webinar. Just to let you know what's coming up on April 2nd, our next webinar is called Under Pressure, Designing Educational Escape Rooms from 10 to 11. And that will be by Rachel Zellini from University of Baltimore. And then Debbie's next accessibility how-to webinar is coming up on April 16th, Achieving Distinguishable Text. So thank you all. I'm going to also put the link in the chat for our complete Maryland Online webinar series for the spring. Again, thanks again, and we'll see you at the next webinar, hopefully.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Debbie.